Week 16 of the NFL season is officially in the books, and we are headed into week 17. It's a Tuesday. You already know what that means. A Tuesday tier list. Let's get into it. All right, so as always, we start with our good friends, the 2025 mock draft season tier. I'm gonna spice it up. The Dolphins, man. The Dolphins might have some really weird outcome where they actually make it to the playoffs, but this is a one and done team. If I've ever seen one, it is dink and dunk, check down to a see you later. Colts. They're not winning a playoff game. Anthony Richardson can only throw the ball 11 times for this offense to be successful. I do think that Anthony Richardson has a lot of time to grow. Remember, this is basically his de facto rookie year. So I'm going to give him until Thanksgiving of next year to show some real progress before I decide if I'm in or out on him as a prospect. But ultimately for this season, I think the Colts would be better served just looking ahead at how can they improve this roster for AR. The New York Football Jets. They've been exciting down the stretch. They gave the Rams a bit of a fight. I think they're going to roll with Rodgers next year, and based on where they're picking in the draft and the weak quarterback class, it might not actually be a bad idea. The Raiders, man, you talk about just screwing over your fan base by winning a game. That is the Vegas Raiders. They fall from the number 1 pick to the number 6 pick. Now there's probably not going to be a quarterback available to them. Does that mean that they're going to invest heavy in Sam Darnold this offseason? I don't know. Is Sam Darnold even going to be an option for them this season? I don't know, but really shooting yourself in the foot beating the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Cleveland Browns, they're probably going to run it back with Deshaun Watson, which is one of the biggest mistakes that a franchise could absolutely ever make, and it may be the reason they lose Myles Garrett. So if I'm a Browns fan, I'm just praying that they don't do that. The Jacksonville Jaguars, who lost to the Raiders, they're bad. But that loss to the Raiders did put them back in the Travis Hunter sweepstakes. No conversations about the girlfriend in the comment sections, please. But yeah, the Jags are a bad team. We understand that. The Titans, listen, them and the Colts actually played a fun game this week. Mason Rudolph looked better than Will Levis. I'm pretty much fully out on Levis, but they'll probably run it back with him because I just don't know what their other option will be next year. The New England Patriots, man, I mean, as happy as a Patriots fan could be, you lost the game, you moved up in the draft pick spot, but Drake May went to Josh Allen's house and had a competitive one-score game with what they got going on over there. I think Drake May is going to be really, really good. I think the Patriots got a good one there. The Dallas Cowboys, they've been impressive to me. I got a little bit of pushback on how impressive they were to me, but listen, Mike McCarthy's coaching his ass off. Mike Zimmer's coaching his ass off. If they had Dak for a full season, Micah for a full season, to me, they're a no doubt playoff team. I wouldn't be shocked if they just, said ball up top. Let's run it back. The Arizona Cardinals, their season's over, and it comes, at the hands of a Bryce Young defeat. The Carolina Panthers ended Kyler Murray's season. You need to have a little bit of internal questions about just how good is Kyler. Those are games that elite quarterbacks win. Those are games that very good quarterbacks win, and Kyler didn't win you that game, and we could have that conversation this offseason. The 49ers, statistically eliminated from the playoffs, lost to the Dolphins. You talk about a team that needs to have an internal conversation about their quarterback. When you have Brock Purdy come into your office this offseason and say, I want 55, 60 million a year, I'd tell him no. Look at how it worked out for the Dolphins, the Jaguars. Look at how it worked out for you giving Ayuk his, ransom last offseason. I'd run it another year with Purdy before I'm willing to commit to paying him. 2 years ago, it was Avengers, it was All-Star cast. This year, it was a really, really injured crew. I'm willing to see where he is at the median, but I'm not willing to pay him the big bucks as things currently stand. The New Orleans Saints, they put up an absolute stinker of a game on Monday Night Football. So stinky, I didn't even come up here to talk about it. I figured it wasn't worth anybody's time, but yeah, they are cooked. So the New York Giants, number 1 pick now. Destiny's in your hands. Lose out, and you get Shador, Cam Ward, whoever may be your guy. Maybe you commit to Travis Hunter and say, let's punt it again. I wouldn't hate that either. Let's wait for potential Arch Manning to New York. I'm just saying, Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young has been very, very interesting. I've really enjoyed what I've seen from him. I think he has certainly earned the right to be the no doubt starter for the Panthers next year. Get him some additional weapons. Like, he's out there with Jalen Coker and Adam Thielen. Like, let's get this guy a T. Higgins or something going on in the wide receiver room this upcoming offseason. And then the Bears, who everybody said fleeced the Panthers on that trade, and now everybody thinks Caleb is washed and Bryce Young's the GOAT. So I don't know. I don't think Caleb's washed. I kind of defended Caleb for a long time in the week recap video that's already out on the channel now. So if you want to see a more extended version of that, check that out. But listen, I just think the guy's 19 touchdowns to 1 interception since week 2. Like, I don't think he is the problem. We get to the Frisky tier, and yes, I still have the Cincinnati Bengals in here, and I get it. Their shot to make the playoffs is not the same as the Dolphins or the Colts. This is a tier list. This is not your typical NFL standings. You want that? Go to ESPN, go to The Score, go to wherever you go. They got full standings there. This is a tier list, and the Bengals are frisky because I actually believe if they made the playoffs, even as the 7 seed matched up against Kansas City or Buffalo, I am giving them a shot. I would give 0 shot to Tua and the Dolphins or Richardson and the Colts to go into Buffalo, go into Arrowhead and win that game. But Burrow, Chase, Higgins on a 1-game sample size, anything could happen there. The Bengals could win that game. Also frisky, the Seattle Seahawks. They are just a tick behind the better teams. We saw that with the loss to the Packers and then this 1-score loss to the Vikings. And it feels like they're consistently in that team, but they could still get into the dance with that defense with Mike McDonald if Geno's having an on game, because we know when Geno is balling, they could play upset, but I wouldn't pick them to do so. The Fringe playoff tier, the Denver Broncos, they are 1 win away from being locked into being a playoff team, and they have the Cincinnati Bengals this Saturday. Should be really interesting. And then the Chiefs in week 18. It's funny, nobody is more Chiefs fans this Wednesday on Christmas than Broncos fans, because a win against the Pittsburgh Steelers likely means you're facing Carson Wentz instead of Patrick Mahomes in week 18 and makes Saturday's game feel a little bit less pressured. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they fumbled the bag, and now Atlanta does lead the NFC South, who they're also in this tier. I still think Tampa's the better team, but I think because earlier in the season, Kirk Cousins went 2-0 against the Buccaneers, the Falcons are going to be likely the team that gets into the playoffs. Will Tampa Bay slide in at the 7 seed? Will Washington? Will Seattle? That's up for a discussion, but Washington's win this week over the Eagles was huge. So realistically, one of these 2 teams wins the NFC South, and the other one pretty likely misses the playoffs. My money right now is on Atlanta, although I do feel Tampa is a bigger threat come postseason play. We get to the playoff teams tier, the Houston Texans. This is their tier. They've lived here seriously since I started doing this tier list, and they lose Tank Dell, gruesome injury. They claim Deontay Johnson, so they still have a decent wide receiver room there if Deontay can learn the playbook. Apparently that was the issue in Baltimore. You have Joe Mixon, you have Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, so there's still weapons. Stroud, I thought, really impressed me in that loss to Kansas City. His pocket navigation, everybody says he's going through a sophomore slump, and I think Bobby Slowick's offense has just been kind of a little bit worse this year, but that defense, man, their pass rush is one of the best in the NFL. I give them a shot in the playoffs to play upset, and they could move all the way up to the 3 seed potentially. I think the 2 seed is technically on the board if they win out and Buffalo loses out. I could be wrong there, but they could move up to the 3 seed with the way Pittsburgh and Baltimore have been battling each other, and obviously Houston plays Baltimore this Christmas Day. Speaking of Pittsburgh, I had to move them down. I had them in the Super Bowl contenders tier for a while, and nothing about their offense actually made me move them down, but the injuries to that secondary, they've just been getting beat up by these, good quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson really diced up that secondary, and I just don't think the defense is at the level it needs to be to sustain what the offense's production will be for a full run. I think they are a tremendous team, and I think they could certainly win 1, 2, 3 potential playoff games, but I just don't see them going on that Super Bowl level run. And now it feels like with Baltimore's victory, they could be going from the wild card position. The LA Chargers. It's a similar boat to the Pittsburgh Steelers, where I certainly think that they could play upset to somebody in the playoffs, but there is limitations for this Chargers team offensively in terms of their weapons. They're very reliant on Justin Herbert being a Superman, and he was able to do that versus the Broncos on that Thursday Night Football game. But again, when it comes to having the ability to do that for 4 straight weeks against 4 very good teams, because you'll be playing playoff teams, I just don't see them having that capability to do so. J.K. Dobbins will be returning from the IR. The Chargers get a win this week. They're locked into the playoffs. A fantastic season for the Chargers and Chargers fans, but I don't see a ceiling of a Super Bowl appearance this year. The Washington Commanders, listen, Jaden Daniels has carried this team to a playoff berth. They're going to get in. I doubt that they lose out at this point and miss it altogether. They should get in. Jaden's been excellent the last 2 weeks versus New Orleans, versus Philly with that defense. He carried them, put the team on his back, backpacked, locked up the Rookie of the Year. Like, he's been really, really, really impressive to me. And the LA Rams, listen, the Rams are the sneaky dark horse of the NFC, man, because you could argue they have the best quarterback. You could argue they have the best coach. You could argue the best wide receiver duo with Puka and Cooper Kupp, although not with AJ and Smitty, but they're up there for sure. And Kyron Williams, and a defense that's coming along with a real pass rush and a real pass rusher in Jared Verse. And they have the makings of a team that could go on a run. They should be hosting a playoff game. The Rams are a scary, scary bunch, in my opinion. All right, so then we get to this final 7 teams that has kind of consistently been these final 7 teams. And I got to tell you, this was the hardest week to differentiate here between what's the standings, what do I feel? I almost did the pussy move and was like, all Super Bowl contenders. And I was like, nah, that's not right. Nobody wants to see that. Let's stir the pot a little bit. And I get it. When people see this tier, some people are going to be mad at me for what I have done here and where the line was drawn in the sand. I get it. These are my thoughts. We'll see where it pans out. I have good reasoning in my opinion, but let's get into it. The Detroit Lions are a Super Bowl contender. I still think with all the injuries on that defense that it's going to be a problem for them to go on a run in the NFC, where potentially they'll have to, if they retain the 1 seed, you could go against Jordan Love, Matt Stafford, Jalen Hurts in that offense. And then to think your prize in the Super Bowl is probably going to be Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Patrick Mahomes. I just don't think that defense right now is built to hold up with all the injuries that they've had. The offense, they're potentially going to get David Montgomery back, so the offense will always be elite. It's, one of the top offenses in the NFL, no doubt. They can win shootouts. They've shown that ability, but when it comes to needing a big stop, I just don't think their defense is capable of getting it against some of these elite offenses, and that's who they're going to be facing on a road to a Super Bowl. So I have them in the contenders tier because I think it could potentially work out that way, but I would lean that it doesn't. I have the Minnesota Vikings next to them. And these are the 2 teams battling it out right now for the 1 seed. I do have some question marks about Sam Darnold being, quarterbacks matter a ton. And I do think the Vikings are legit contenders. And I love their defense and I love their weapons. But we have to acknowledge that Sam Darnold isn't exactly a top 5 quarterback. And pretty traditionally in the NFL, those are the guys that win Super Bowls, top 10 quarterbacks. Is he going to be able to go on a playoff run where he is the worst quarterback in every game that he plays and win? Can the Vikings overcome that? That was kind of my question mark with the 49ers last year. And the answer was yes, but no. I mean, they made the Super Bowl, but they didn't win it. So I was kind of right at the end of the day. They didn't win it because in overtime, Brock Purdy got a field goal, Patrick Mahomes got a touchdown. Here, are we in a similar boat with Sam Darnold? Because I think outside of Darnold, this Vikings team is elite everywhere. Elite weapons, a really good offensive line. The injury there to Darisaw really hurts, but elite pass rush, elite at taking the ball away. Brian Flores is excellent. Kevin O'Connell's excellent. The Sam Darnold question as to what is he for the Vikings next year will be answered. And I got the Green Bay Packers in this tier, the NFC North tier. You might as well call it that. Jordan Love, his Toyotathon play continues, and I'm excited for that, but they're going to have to go on the road. They're going to be a wild card team. They're going to play 3 straight road games. Can they continuously do that? and get to a Super Bowl. They don't have an elite alpha wide receiver. You know, the other teams in the NFC, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown. Who do you go to in the big spot if you were the Packers? They just don't have that guy. It was the thing that worried me at the beginning of the season. It's the thing that's holding me back a little bit here. I don't think their defense is quite as elite as Minnesota or Philadelphia in the NFC as well. They're good, but I don't think that they're the best at anything in the NFC. And with that being said, it's kind of hard for me to picture them going to a Super Bowl and then winning one against one of these three AFC teams that we're going to talk about that I think are all substantially better than them. Then we get to the Super Bowl favorites tier, and I have to start, of course, with the Kansas City Chiefs, 14-1. Hollywood Brown is back. Pacheco getting healthy, getting going. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Spags, Kelsey, Demon Time, Black Magic, the refs, whatever you want to give credit to for the Chiefs. At this point, they are 14-1. They're undeniable. They're the back-to-back Super Bowl champs. Until somebody takes them out, they are going to live in this Super Bowl favorites tier. And even if somebody takes them out, they're probably just going to live there again next year too. Like, at what point is it okay to call the Chiefs not Super Bowl favorites? Josh Allen and the Bills, listen, they played a bad game of football versus the Patriots, and they just have so much talent that they still won that game. James Cook has really come into his own. I believe he now has the lead for rushing touchdowns this year. I think he's up to 14 now on the season, so shout out to James Cook. The guy's been an absolute beast for them. You have Cooper, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakur, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. Like, all the weapons are getting healthy. Sean McDermott's been coaching up that defense. Teron Johnson is one of the more underrated players in the NFL. Buffalo's got a really strong unit. I moved the Baltimore Ravens up into this tier because, man, the defense has finally come around and the offense has been the most efficient in the NFL this year. It's actually one of the most efficient offenses of all time. Derrick Henry seems like he's getting stronger in these winter games. Having to tackle him, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. The read option with him and Lamar is hitting its stride. We saw it versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was like, well, we're going to commit to Lamar. Derrick Henry, torch. Mark Andrews is scoring touchdowns every week. Zay Flowers has really developed into a nice wide receiver one. And on that defensive side, Marlon Humphrey is a defensive player of the year candidate. Roquan Smith has been great. You still got Madubuike, Kyle Hamilton. There's pieces over there. It's all starting to come together for Baltimore, and I do believe that they have the pieces. This is Lamar's best year as a passer. He's going to need that to go on and win a Super Bowl. I still have the Eagles in this year. And I get it. A lot of these NFC North fans and a lot of people are just going to be like, how do you have the Eagles above the Lions and the Vikings when those two teams are competing for the 1 seed? We just don't see that. We don't think that's realistic. I understand where you were coming from. But again, I must stress, this is not a standings. This is where I feel that these teams are. And the Eagles, I think it's pretty conventional that they would have won that game versus Washington had Jalen Hurts stayed healthy. They lost by 3 points when Kenny Pickett was in, and they just couldn't get drives going. But something that caused me to think about was the Philadelphia Eagles this year in games that A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts play from start to finish are undefeated. When those two guys play games from start to finish, they are undefeated. This is a team that's just coming off of a 10-game win streak. This is a team that has one of the best coverage defenses in the NFL that just got gassed from being out there so long. CJ Gardner-Johnson getting thrown out of the game. The offense can't sustain drives. Saquon Barkley is your offensive player of the year. A.J. Brown's a top 4 wide receiver in this league. Devonta Smith is excellent. Like, you guys know the deal with the Eagles. The offensive line, it's top 5. I just think that game kind of showed that what Jalen Hurts does on a week-to-week basis isn't just replaceable by anybody. Now, I think Kenny Pickett sucks, so to be like, oh, Jalen Hurts is the MVP now, a little hot of a take for me, but I do think that when out there, the Eagles are the best team in the NFC, and this should be their year. So since I feel that way, I got to put them in the favorites tier. But again, I understand if you want to mix and match those top 7 teams. I feel pretty confidently like those top 7 teams are the top 7 teams, but I thought it would be a little bitch move if I just threw them all in one tier. So that's how I separated it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? You love the NFL. Hit that subscribe button. I will catch you guys next time. Peace.